Jim, I want to start with recent news coming from U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She's calling for business leaders to pay higher taxes to support the Biden infrastructure plan. Now, if businesses in the U.S. are, let's say, overtaxed, overregulated, what do you see their options as being?
Well, as you know, the U.S. is no longer as competitive as it used to be in the world markets. I'm not the only one who knows that, and many companies have moved away, put factories in other places. They're forcing them out. There'll be more of the same. I mean, if you're trying to compete on the world market and you have to pay higher taxes and everybody else has to pay higher taxes, it's impossible to compete. So you have to manufacture somewhere else. It's not good for America. But Mrs. Yellen and Mr. Biden, their whole lives, have loved taxing and borrowing and spending money.
Aside from this, we're also seeing businesses looking for workers. A record 8.1 million job openings in America are available, yet no workers are in sight. Jim, despite the numbers of people being vaccinated growing each day, why isn't America going back to work?
From what I read, the unemployment benefits are so high that many people can make more or as much just staying home and letting the government send them checks. I don't know the facts, but I've read several articles to that effect, and if that's the case, that's the problem. I mean, there are many people in the world who say, I'd rather sit home and watch the sports or watch the drama than work. They're sending me money. If that's the case, Patrick, of course, America's shooting itself in the foot.
Jim, the money printing, the stimulus, as we just kind of touch on, the decade of low interest rates, we're seeing more and more talk of inflation, and we are seeing that talk in prices. Lumber prices up, homes, food, fuel. Can the Fed keep on this course of loose monetary policy, or will we start to see tightening perhaps sooner than later?
Well, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury both say, don't worry, we have this under control. If there's inflation, it's transitory, etc. Now, I know from history that either they don't know what they're talking about or they're lying, because throughout history, when you have staggering amounts of money printed and borrowed and spent, it's nearly always led to inflation. And we do see inflation rising now. I would suspect we're going to have more inflation despite what these guys say. I have certainly learned I've been investing a long time and have been reading a long time. I've learned that most of the time these guys either don't know what they're talking about or lie. I suspect it's both this time as well. They're just not being honest with all of us, not being honest with themselves.
Do you think if that inflation really starts to rise, maybe even get out of control a bit, do you think the Fed will have the courage to raise interest rates?
No, certainly not, because these guys are more interested in keeping their jobs than anything else, Patrick. They don't care about your job or my children. They care about their jobs, and they know that raising interest rates will not be popular. So they'll do everything they can, including printing more money or buying more bonds, to keep interest rates down. Now, eventually, the market says, we don't care. We've seen this movie before. We're going to get out. And they do, and then it gets out of control, and interest rates go higher, inflation goes higher, it all feeds on itself. And then you have really, really, really bad times. But if the market takes over from the central banks, and the market has more money and more brains than the central banks, then we're all in serious trouble.
It seems that the keeper of the U.S. dollar, the Federal Reserve, maybe even the U.S. government, are the very ones giving reason for the rest of the world to get out of the U.S. dollar, the world's reserve currency. Is the U.S. dollar on the path to being removed as the world's reserve currency?
We've had many central currencies or international currencies in history. None of them have lasted more than 100, 150 years in history. U.S. dollar has been around for several decades. So maybe it clearly is coming to an end. The fundamentals are there. America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Many countries are starting to look for something to compete with the U.S. dollar. The way an international currency is supposed to work, it's supposed to be neutral. But if Washington gets angry at you, They put sanctions on you and cut you off and say you cannot use the US dollar. Well, that's not what an international medium of exchange is supposed to be. So many countries, for political reasons, are looking for something to compete with the dollar, and for economic reasons. The US is the largest debtor nation in world history. It's getting worse every day. I'm not the only person who knows that's a potential fundamental problem. So unfortunately, I'm an American, and I don't like saying it, but unfortunately, the world is now looking away from the US dollar for political and economic reasons. It's not going yet, but we're starting the process.
The current Fed policies, government policies, do you think that perhaps they've accelerated this US dollar retreat from reserve currency?
Of course, when you print staggering amounts of money and borrow staggering amounts of money, I'm not the only one who knows that America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Everybody can see what's going on, and some people start to act.
Jim, that brings a question here that I'd like to ask you. Is it possible then for a nation on the rise, such as China, to have the largest population, largest economy, perhaps the greatest influence over much of the world, and yet not have its own currency, or at least be a part of a currency that is the world's reserve currency?
Well, the Chinese currency has been opening up in the last 15 years or so, but it's still not a convertible currency. You can't buy and sell. You can't just pick up the phone or go on the computer and buy and sell renminbi. So it's impossible to be the world's reserve currency or a medium of exchange if you're not freely tradable. China is moving in that direction, and has been moving in that direction for a few years. But until they're freely convertible, and even then it will take people a while to understand it, it's not there yet. It's the main currency I see on the horizon, which can compete with the dollar, but it's certainly not there yet.
The next reserve currency, do you think it may perhaps be the yuan, Chinese yuan, or perhaps a basket of currencies?
The Chinese currency is the only one I see on the horizon that could do it. Certainly cannot be the Japanese yen or the English currency or even the euro. I don't see any other currency at the moment. Now, it cannot do it either right now. As I said, it's a blocked currency. It's not even tradable, completely freely tradable. So it can't work either, at least not the way things are now.
I want to get back to the U.S. here. Is the U.S. as a capitalist country dying? And what type of government do you think it will become if you do see it as being capitalism is dying?
Well, there's no question that the U.S. is becoming more and more collectivist, whichever word you want to use to describe it. California is more socialist than China is now, even though China calls itself communist and California calls itself capitalist. It is happening in many Western countries. They're becoming more and more collectivist, if you will. And it looks as though that's going to continue. Everybody wants a free lunch. Now there's something called MMT, which is more money today. I know, what do they call it? Modern monetary theory. I call it more money today. It's easy money. Everybody loves an easy answer. And so people are looking more and more for easy answers, certainly in the West. China, for whatever reason, is going less in that direction. China's not bailing people out. China's letting people go bankrupt. So China, for whatever reason, is less in that direction than many Western countries. And China has said, if you get in trouble, we're not going to bail you out. Well, in the West, they bail you out if you get in trouble. Not good, but they do it.